Hi, Alma.
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, okay, great. Hold on one second. I think I have an audio issue, and I'm going to switch headphones here and mute my... All right, can you hear me?
Yes, with a little bit of echo and a little bit of distant beeping that sounds like close to
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now there should be no echo. I don't know why I've got two systems running. Of course, this would have to happen on Zoom at some point. Good, excellent. So it looks like we are being joined by a number of people. Yeah. It is 12:02. We will get going here. I'm going to pin your video up to the front. Excellent. Wonderful. My name is Jonathan Neal. I am the director of the Center for Business and Management of the Arts at Claremont Graduate University. It gives me great pleasure to be joined today in our conversation series by Megan Steinman, the director of the Underground Museum here in Los Angeles. And if you've joined us before, you know these conversations are relatively informal. We'll talk for about half an hour, or hopefully Megan will talk for about a half an hour. I'll try and stay quiet. And we will take some questions from our participants online on Zoom. I'm sure everybody's getting very expert at this, although as I demonstrated right at the beginning of this conversation, that I'm obviously still only on maybe the blue slopes, the green slopes of this of this adventure, trying to get the audio and the video to work together. So if you have questions, please put them into the chat window, and then we will moderate those and deliver them to our wonderful guest. Thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Hi, everybody.
So to get going, as I like to begin most of these conversations, how have you been? How are you managing the current quarantine that we have here in California, and as we know, many other people around the country are experiencing, if not around the globe?
Yeah, thank you for asking. It is a roller coaster. I'm sure everybody is experiencing the same, constant waves of the macro and the micro that we are having to deal with every single day. I'm somebody who thrives in a lot of structure. And so what I've been trying to do is create a lot of routine for myself. I try to wake up at the same time every day. Allie, who is our wonderful meditation instructor at the Underground Museum, leads meditations every morning at 9 a.m. Please follow her. Girl Allie, A-L-L-I. So I do that every day. I obviously have a lot of work to do, and it's hard. It's hard to do the work and to also know that there is kind of this global need for us to also concentrate on things like our own health, our family's health, the environment's health, et cetera. And so I'm trying to manage all of that. I'm also making time to get out every day. I have a wonderful friend and photographer who's been my partner at the Underground Museum for a bit, Melody McDaniel. She and I do a walk every day. Shout out to Melody if she's watching. Just trying to kind of also keep it all in perspective. I'm also, and I really want to offer this to everybody, if you're going through these same kind of waves, I'm trying to be super forgiving, like I'm trying to just remember that when I have, each kind of emotion that I'm having that probably nobody has ever been through what we're going through right now, and that there is no right way to get through a pandemic, and that all of these emotions are super legit, and and they just are. So yeah, so I'm just trying to again be really honest, be really measured, and again trying to make a routine, but understand that we now have to kind of upend all of our routines moving forward and be really flexible to new ones. So yeah. That's it.
Have you picked up any new or interesting habits or pieces of your routine that you would not have expected before? I read the newspapers, various different ones every morning, and it seems like there's a lot of stress baking and other things that are happening. So I'm always curious to know what has surprised you about your own routine or your own sort of environment at this point.
Okay, full disclosure, y'all, I do not cook. I did my 20s in New York, which totally trained me on the fine art of ordering out. But I'm now cooking, I'm now making food for myself. Things that have also kind of kicked into higher gear is that I am kind of an organizer by nature. And I come from a really beautiful, loving, large family who we are all kind of trained by my grandmother in the art of keeping togetherness going, right? And so I'm just kind of following all of those leads and making sure that I stay really connected to people. So, I guess the surprise is the cooking, and the non-surprise slash kind of kicked into hyperdrive is the, gather your people, keep them close, check in, figure out all the ways that that's possible.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit more about that, particularly as it relates to the Underground Museum itself and what you have been undergoing and dealing with in order to keep the togetherness of the institution there and to plan for the both immediate and longer term future.
Yeah, so, we were really clear when this all started that, we kind of came up with this saying. I don't know if any of you have received our mailing about Noah Davis's exhibition that was paused, which is that, when a boat at sea is surrounded by fog, it drops anchor, right? And it waits for the fog to clear. And so that is really the metaphor, the visual that we have been holding tight to at the museum, of that, we cannot make any rash or rushed decisions of how to move forward in this moment, because we just do not know. None of us knows the landscape that we're working within. So what we can do, and this is to the point of the organizing, is to hold tight to each other, right? To look around and see who's on this boat with you right now. And that applies to absolutely our staff and our board and all of our supporters, and also our neighborhood, right? So what we have been doing first and foremost is keeping in really good contact with each other. We've maintained our weekly staff meetings, and of course there's actually a little bit more business that we are doing now that we are ramping up what will soon be our online presence moving forward, which is all in development. But a lot of it is also, of course, the usual, as I'm sure all of you guys are doing when you do these Zoom calls and classes. It's just the checking in, like, how's everybody doing? What's everybody doing? How can we support each other? How can we call each other? I also just obviously make a lot of personal phone calls, making sure that I'm checking in with everybody on a one-on-one basis, because sometimes, as we all know too, the Zoom is great, but it's also a very public demonstration nonetheless, right? And so there's a lot of emotions and language and feelings and experiences. And again, going back to that roller coaster, right? And those waves that everybody is going through that need to be expressed more on a one-on-one basis. So just making really a lot of time and space for that for all of the staff. We are also making sure that all of our staff is cared for physically and as well as emotionally and mentally. So making sure that everybody has supplies, that they have the resources, that are out there. There's obviously so much information to sort through and so many facts and figures and, Google Docs and whatnot. So I've been doing a lot of work to just kind of, upfront load all of the information that I feel is the most legit and is the most direct and the most applicable to all of our staff, and making sure that they know, again, where they can literally go shopping. We're also making sure that they are getting CSA deliveries through one of our longstanding partners, Supermarket, so that fresh produce is coming to them. And also just making sure that they, know where to get help if they need to get help. So, that kind of thing. Separately, we're obviously doing a ton of work to make sure our finances are in order, right? This is, obviously the number one thing that we're looking towards as far as what's possible for longevity at this time. And again, that is right up in the category of, a boat being surrounded by fog. We don't have accurate answers right now. Also because obviously, as everybody knows, the funding landscape has so dramatically changed that even if we were to understand our specific place and our specific anchor and all of our finances and our structure, et cetera, the entire landscape that we are operating within has changed so dramatically that it's hard to understand kind of what our place is within that. But that said, just keeping, again, like really close conversation. I also spent the last week calling up all of our community partners. So, our local librarian and business owners and all of the people that participate in our holiday block parties, just like, understanding, as always, that the Underground Museum has so fundamentally been one neighbor amongst many neighbors, one business amongst many businesses on our block. And that's not going to change, right? And so part of our, future plans includes how do we remain that neighbor? How do we remain that, co-business participant on the block? And what does our particular system of support look like that incorporates all of these players, right? And that's what we're looking to build right now.
I'm super interested in that. So what is the tenor or the character of some of those conversations that you're having with the community partners, the other businesses and the other organizations that are in your immediate vicinity?
Yeah, it ranges depending on what they do, right? So for example, Natural Art, which is the Jamaican restaurant right across the street from us, who's been, like with us from the start, feeding us, but also feeding all of our many guests, they are the go-to spot for people that are coming to all of our events at the Underground Museum. They're still open for business, I want to call out. So if anybody wants to order online food, please, please, please do. They are offering pickup. You can also get with them through Grubhub or any of the other online services. They're still open, and they're, ready and willing to do whatever we're going to do. It's like we're just kind of staying in communication, and we're trying to figure out, again, how we can just amplify their voice through our channels, right? And then on kind of like, so let's say the other side of that spectrum is the library that I mentioned, right? And the library, though, is one branch that answers to kind of a central hub of libraries, and that has, as I'm sure know way better than I do, has its own set of bureaucratic rules and protocols that it has to follow along. So when I talk to the librarian there and I say, okay, well, so what are you guys doing, and how can we amplify whatever you're doing? We've already done some programming with them, and so how can we potentially take some of that programming and transfer it to an online format? All of that is great, but it has to also flow through whatever the PR department at the central branch says is okay for them to do. So it's not that we're not going to do it. It's just that some of the conversations are really immediate, and some of them, take a little bit more planning. And so it's just also understanding too that, we're going to unfortunately be in this for a long time, and the rollout is going to be long. And so it's about, planning, right? What are the things that we can do immediately? What are the things that we are going to continue to do and start the process to make possible?
So, I mean, these are the idea that you would have the community partners that are so entrenched in your operations. It's a very interesting model for how an arts organization going forward can kind of exist. And we know that, you know, at various different scales, organizations have these kinds of key relationships with vendors and other folks. But it's really kind of interesting to think about this as a kind of distributed community network model, right? That you have an organization like yours, which has really got this kind of public facing, service minded, community minded mission. And what it's capable of doing is organizing all of the kind of similarly minded, but also sometimes just straight up business practices in a neighborhood in order to create a kind of resilience or robustness, like you said, to amplify the message. Do you, I mean, my hope is that we see more and more of that going forward, but in your sort of predictive mindset, is there anything that you've been doing currently or the practices that you've been engaged in over the last couple of weeks that you see as a lesson for the future of how you could transform even more of what it is that you have been doing, or ways of operating that allow you to be at once more nimble, more resilient, more impactful? What are some of the lessons that you have been learning, both personally and as an organization, that you think you'll take with you when this scenario, when this pandemic ultimately when we see the back end of it?
There's a lot of questions in that. So I can try to work backwards from the beginning. Is that, you know, one of the kind of fundamental beliefs and driving forces of how we operate, you know, as an arts organization, but also, like I said, as a community partner, is really understanding that going to a museum and experiencing art is one part of a very large ecosystem that equals people's lives, right? In order to really support that entire ecosystem is to understand, you know, all the other myriad of ways that people spend their time, right? You know, and I've always kind of thought about it in, you know, terms of like, literally, if somebody was walking down our block, all of the different businesses that they could encounter by the time that they get to our museum, right? And that all of those, you know, different businesses would and could, you know, support them, impact them, you know, have leverage on their lives. And so the way to get people to feel that they belong at a museum is to, you know, acknowledge all of those different pieces, right? And to kind of work with them and to make them, you know, part of the conversation that you're having once people are in the museum and looking at the art, right? That it's not that, you know, the art, you know, the museum isn't a vacuum, right? Where there is only this one activity, because actually all of those things that are happening in the rest of people's lives are, you know, are brought to the museum and are brought to the way that they think about art. And so then I think that, you know, in terms of being nimble and in terms of, you know, how to, you know, support ourselves as an institution and also kind of move forward in our moves, it's almost like reversing that process, right? You know, okay, well, so now how do we reach back out to all those different places that people are living their lives and insert the museum and make sure that the museum is as important in the thinking through about food distribution and thinking through about, you know, healthy lifestyle practices like meditation and yoga, and thinking through retail and thinking through, you know, other knowledge spaces like the library or other spaces that we can come together to support one another as far as, you know, a food giveaway or supporting schools, right? That if the museum has its presence there, you know, it's going to, you know, in the long game of being a museum, support us by having our presence be, you know, forefront in all ways of people's lives. And I think that we're able to be nimble because of the relationships that we set up, right? So that if we start talking with our community partners, whether those be, the food bank, or whether those be the schools, or whether those be even just like the Arlington Heights Neighborhood Association, by being part of those conversations, not just as an anonymous institution, but really as like the folks over there down at the Underground Museum, right? Like those are our people, that thereby we can continue to thrive within, in the lives of everybody, that are coming to the museum, and hopefully also find, other ways of gaining support that we might not have even known that our community partners would like to present to us.
Yeah, so that's what are you taking away also from those community partners? Is there anything that you've come across or learned from the neighborhood, the other businesses, the people that you've been interacting with? So often there's a sense of the museum as community hub, as a kind of aggregator of information and a distributor of services or an amplifier of voices. But what is it, if there is anything, what is it that you've kind of been learning from some of these other conversations you've been having? What are some of the things or practices or activities that you've witnessed within your domain that you say, oh wow, they're doing this, that's great, we should adopt that, we should think about helping out with this? What are some of those things?
I think the first thing is to always be in the lane of helping out. Like one of the first lessons of, community practice and public art practice that I gained specifically from practices like Suzanne Lacey, who I worked with for several years, is also whenever you go, into a neighborhood, a block, a community group, as we have as a museum, even though we've been there now for almost 10 years, which is hard to believe, that there already are a lot of organizations doing good work, right? And it's not about kind of being the aggregate that brings them all into you. It's about like, okay, how do we all support one another and good work together and find the links in between, right? And the tethers in between, so that we're all supporting one another and we're all acknowledging the work that everybody is doing. So I think that's, the number one is to just, support where you can support. So for example, Supermarket, who is a wonderful organization run by an incredible woman named Olympia Osset, has been not single-handedly, I should say, but like she is such a force taking on the issue of the food desert in South Los Angeles, right? And she does that through a set of mobile farmers market stands that move between Leimert Park. She has once a month at the Underground Museum, as well as several other locations across South LA. And she also does, if anybody wants to sign up, a monthly delivery service that is wonderful, that brings you all organic produce, dates, nuts, everything. And so she has organized a food giveaway that she's doing probably about once a month, and also, like I said, the delivery service. So important for us is not to say, oh, we're going to do that same thing. Important for us to say is, how do we support Olympia to do the best work that she can? How do we promote it? How do we use our channels to promote it? And also, how do we potentially support with funds? And how do we make people aware that supporting her is supporting our neighborhood, is supporting the museum?
Interesting. Really? Yeah,
and
go ahead.
Too, like, one thing that we've super learned, and is more challenging as we grow, for sure, is if you see something that needs to get done, go out and do it, right? Like essentially our museum was founded by an artist, Noah Davis, who saw a incredible lack of representation in the art world. And so he said, all right, I'm going to go out and do it. I'm going to go out and I'm going to make a museum and address that.
Nice. That kind of, I think that entrepreneurial spirit is something that we take very seriously in our programs. It's also something I think that though the word entrepreneur has gotten a kind of bad rap in larger circles for one reason or another, it's that kind of get out and go do it attitude that is really important, both among artists as well as I think the next generation of arts managers and people in the business landscape. Because God knows that what comes out of the next few months is going to require a lot of people going out and doing brand new things and rethinking how these models all work. And so it's going to be an interesting time. along those lines, you got other initiatives and you're a doer. You do a lot more than just the Underground Museum. How is the current situation affecting some of your other big projects? I know you've got a thing going on at LAX. I know that you've been involved with a lot of other both commercial organizations and other nonprofits realizing large-scale public art projects and other things. How is that all unfolding in the age of the coronavirus?
In many, many different forms. It's almost incredible to understand how scale matters at this time, you know, and so much of what we're able to accomplish at the Underground Museum in this current moment and kind of how we forecast moving forward also has to do with our small scale, you know, and I want to just say, like, I'm really clear about that, right? In the sense of there's so many other more large scale museums and organizations that don't have that advantage, you know, because at this time right now, it really is an advantage. And so I'm really clear about that. Yeah, I'm doing an exhibition. I'm curating an exhibition right now at the new, still being built International Terminal of LAX. I don't know if any of you have gone by it in your planes or in your terminals, but it is called the Midfield Satellite Concourse. It's being built in the middle of the tarmac of LAX, and right now it is very undetermined of how construction will progress, right? I think that, you know, it is an incredible undertaking, as you can imagine, that has incredible amount of people, workers involved, but also different companies involved, right? That all have their own contractual obligations, that all have their own resourcing and lack of resourcing, as it were. You also have the airport to contend with that is obviously undergoing an incredible amount of restructuring at the moment of its just basic daily protocols every day, which is changing. And so we just don't have a date yet of, you know, when this exhibition is going to happen, how construction is going to progress. You know, the great news is that the people, many people, I should say, who are finding benefit from this time are artists who, you know, if they are lucky enough to have projects secured, funding secured, which this exhibition happens to be one of those, that they are now afforded a lot of concentrated studio time. So, that's a benefit. And I think it's really important to highlight, you know, this is not, you know, I think it's dangerous for us all to get into a lot of comparison of like where different people are at, because, you know, it runs the gamut, right? But there are people and there are artists, and I think it's important to highlight the good stories too that are in an okay spot right now, you know, and there's many artists too, I should say, who are having the first break for the first time in a long time too, you know what I mean? And that this is actually, at least for the time being, a good thing, you know, and that they have been going really hard for a long time. And so it's a great time for reflection and research and again, like concentrated studio time. So the artists that I'm working with on the LAX project are in that camp. Luckily, I'm super grateful and happy to be a income resource for them at this time. You know, it's a city project, so it's well funded in the sense that artists can make good work with it and hopefully support themselves with it, at least for the time being. So that's where that project is at. You know, and then I have done obviously a check-in with some of my other former partners, you know, in the more corporate world, and a lot of them are actually tech-based companies up in San Francisco. So while they're all remotely, they're also they're doing okay. Like, this is actually the sector that has been probably, at least in the software sector, certainly not in the hardware sector and manufacturing sector, but in the software sector, you know, they're okay for now.
Yeah, is there what are some of the things that you've learned working with those larger entities, particularly in the commercial sector and the tech sector, but maybe even working with the partners on the LAX project. What are some of the things that you've learned from those experiences that you're, one, able to bring to your work at the Underground Museum, where scale is very different and mission may be very different? But then two, what are some of the things that you've either seen or you've learned from them in terms of just sort of general management, general kind of forecasting outlook and a way of handling not just the current scenario, but any future scenario that comes up?
Yeah, I think that the number one thing I've learned, and it's so essential for anybody working in the arts, is how to communicate art ideas to a vastly different, audience, right?
Yeah.
And so when you are working on projects, public projects or corporate projects, with teams of people that have absolutely zero art experience, right? And also that you're asking them to participate in it. It's not that the projects that I'm doing are necessarily going into either a corporate entity or being brought for corporate entities, publication or use. But it's also that I'm involving a lot of the people that work in these companies, in the IT departments, in the research departments, in the manufacture department, in the
I
procurement.
must love you.
And they're like, you want to do what with what?
What? No one's ever asked us to do that before.
Yeah, and so a lot of my job is to have people understand, what it is that we're trying to do, and to also, understand what they do. You know what I mean? To
Right.
really meet them and to really get us both on the same page. I've had some incredible wins where, you do kind of get over that hump of somebody having so much resistance to the idea because it is so far outside of their wheelhouse. And then when they finally take it on and they understand the actual potential of whatever it is they do, right? Whatever their lane is, you kind of just expanded it and they just get so into it. It's really exciting. And then I think as far as, what I've learned from corporate entities is that, that risk taking is really scary and really important, that these corporate entities who are taking on art programs when it is, again, like I said, not in their wheelhouse, right? And even though they definitely see art as a useful tool, especially of course in the marketing realm, right? That, for all intents and purposes, they too are stepping way outside of their comfort zone in order to, divert large funds to an art program. And I think that, with no real ROI, our programs do not have an ROI that is in any way quantifiable. It is 100% intangible, what it will benefit and who it will benefit within a corporate entity. And so I think the fact, I should say these programs are sometimes long and sometimes very short-lived because of that. But I think that the initial risk is the piece that's really important to learn from.
It's an interesting way of thinking about it. I think when we on the side of arts and culture hear these stories or think about the interface with the non-arts sector, be that commercial, industrial, tech, finance, what have you, there's always a sense of how do you communicate these projects? How do you communicate the mission, the passion? I've found that they're often super intelligent people on the other side of those conversations, right? I mean, they either know their industries, they are curious, they have an intellectual bent, they've gotten to where they are, not just because they're able to, whip the widgets into shape or something like that. But what are, in your experience, you mentioned, how do you get over the hump in that kind of communication? Because I think that even when you're talking to communities within the arts sector, there's always a sense of resistance. There's always a sense of what is this next thing that we're trying to do? What is the risk that you're asking us to take? What are some of the insights that you have about how do you make that? How do you communicate these things? How do you communicate your enthusiasm so that it becomes somebody else's enthusiasm in terms that they can get, in terms that they can own?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And it's different for every scenario. I think what I mostly do as a strategy is exactly like you said, understand that knowledge sets come in all, forms, right? And to really understand that whoever I'm talking to has spent a lot of time working on theirs, and to really respect that, right? And to not, create any kind of hierarchies of what's important and not denigrate anybody else's, experience of the work, right? And so of their own work, I should say more specifically. And so I think that the thing that I usually do is I try to take first and foremost a really like wide, high view, like, what's the end goal that we're trying to get to together, right? What would be that person's goal in this particular scenario, and how can I guide us all to that? I think second of all is actually, with that same respect that I was mentioning for what another person does, is to really actually, meet them there, talk on their terms and get excited about what they do and demonstrate that I understand what they do very clearly, so that they feel really respected and comfortable in the interaction that we're having. And it's not that it's faked. Like, for example, there's this woman, Kim, who is the liaison for our art team at the construction site of LAX. She is amazing. This is this woman that, like, her entire job is to take every single different kind of team that the airport could be bringing in to inspect the construction site. She knows this construction site like the back of her hand. She knows all the people working there. She knows all the twists and turns to kind of get you, through doorways, upstairs, around wires, and she does it with like this exuberance that's like infectious, and I really, it's not a job I would ever do, but she does it really amazingly. And so it's like just bringing that same kind of enthusiasm back to her and acknowledging and being grateful for what she does for us, right? And so I think that if you can get to that point, you can make a lot of headway. And then I would just say, again, going back to that really kind of, like I said, 30,000 foot view, that when I am tasked with creating an art program for a corporate entity, and they kind of give me a certain set of asks, or if they give me a product or something that they're trying to communicate, I do a lot of research, and I really try to understand what is the emotional driver behind what they are trying to communicate, and the reason for that product or that service or that app or that terminal being in the world. Like, what is it trying to do? And so I can understand that then, and I've actually done this in the past, I can not only, deliver a art program or a artwork installation that specifically addresses that emotional drive, but I can also actually get them to understand that there is an emotional content that maybe they weren't even thinking about, because they were kind of very much in the, marketing box or the corporate box or whatever, but that, the whole point of the artwork is to get to some more core truths about what they're trying to communicate. And I think that if I can uncover and display and communicate those core truths, then it really gets everybody, and it just like, it's almost like a different positionality that people are getting to in their understanding of the work.
That's amazing. It's such a great mindset to have. We are just tomorrow beginning the first class of our new venture creation course, which starts the whole entrepreneurship sequence in our program. And so I've been going back through all of the materials, because of course we have to transition everything to online. And so it's, creating a whole new set of materials and a whole new way of breaking down the course. But starting with the big picture, what you're trying to get out of it. And then also everything about this is trying to connect with who it is that you're serving. What is the value proposition to the community, the audience, the user, the consumer? It is a mindset that obviously transcends the immediacy of any kind of new venture or entrepreneurship focus. It's kind of just where you have to be if you want to get larger projects done or get partnerships done or anything else. You have to put yourself in the in the shoes, sorry, in the feet, maybe even more intimately, of the other party or of the other people. And you have to be able to switch between those positions kind of deftly and have that level of empathy and understanding. And it's so great to hear you talk about that from your standpoint, because I don't think many people would appreciate that about effective curators and programmers and directors in the arts and cultural field. That is in fact what they are doing, right? That this is a capacity that you kind of have to develop, and you learn by dealing with other individuals to make these kinds of large scale things happen, which has to also live then side by side with the artistic mindset, right? With these creative individuals who you said are spending a bunch of time in the studio now, or really sort of need the time for reflection and come out with the singularity of vision that then sometimes needs to be translated by their mediators.
Right. And I think that, you and I were talking last week about this, is that, this current moment that we're in offers so much time for reflection on this. I think that the way that our lives are being stripped back in such an immediate and urgent way to these kind of core emotional truths, right? That we as curators and arts administrators, I think it's an opportunity for us to understand that these are the same positions that artists are taking on every day in the studio, right? And that, we're almost having to, instead of coming at it from this angle and trying to work backwards into that emotional truth and into that kind of core human conditional understanding, that we're now in it, right there with everybody else. And so, with all kind of understanding that, of the realities and the stress that we are all facing right now and experiencing right now, I think that there's also a real opportunity, especially working within the arts, to understand that that this is the start. This is the starting.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a great point to make, and I think we need to make it over and over again, that even though so much of the headlines that we're reading or the information that's coming to us can have this kind of very grim overtone, and a lot of it is about the need for support, the need for funds, the need to just make sure that people are surviving. This is a kind of amazing reset, right? I mean, everything does change after this, and in a way that I don't think, and you put this nicely earlier, that anybody has experienced before, right? This is a reset that no one else has ever understood, right? And I think that in the aftermath of many of the kinds of conflicts that we've seen, either globally or domestically, this is now one that everyone is genuinely sharing around the globe in one capacity or another. And there is I don't want this to sound sort of cynical or opportunistic, but just there is opportunity, right? There is this amazing moment to stand back and say, okay, what's important? How do we act? What is it that we can put into place now that we might not have been able to be put into place before? It kind of reminds me, even 4 months ago, if you can imagine the sort of quaint notion of a presidential campaign, there was this idea that, that no one would ever talk about something like universal healthcare or universal basic income or these kinds of things. And now it's almost as if it's like, well, wait a second, they're about to send, Andrew Yang got his wish. They're about to send universal basic income to most Americans, and up to certain levels. And the healthcare system is going to have to be completely rethought going forward, given what we're looking at right now. And I imagine that, and I hope that we'll see that going forward. So, I mean, these are big picture things. They form the backdrop. The arts need to be right there with everything. Right? I mean, absolutely, in terms of providing the kind of creativity, the lateral thinking, the passion and the drive and the singularity of vision that can go along with creating new publics and new collectivities. I mean, it's like 100% there. And I always feel bad, like, carrying the banner for like, listen, it's not optimism, but there is this opportunity that we can really seize on. And I hope that we're able to sort of continue to mention that and continue to get that message forward as we go forward through this time.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, first and foremost, I've been in a women's only science fiction book club for the last 10 years.
Right on.
And so I've read a lot of, dystopic and apocalyptic, fiction. I think that one of the
Now, is
things,
that women's only in terms of readers or in terms of authors or both?
women's only readers. Yeah.
Okay.
That started because we felt that there was a lack of women readership, but also women authorship in the field. There is definitely a wonderful amount of women writers that need acknowledgement, but as far as the book club is concerned, women only readers. But that is all to say that, we are living right now through a time, that has been imagined by many, many authors, but has never, like I said, been experienced. And so it will be written about by many more authors for years and years to come. So I think going back to my original piece of being very compassionate to oneself, I think to understand, the epicness of what is actually happening to us right now is really, really important. And I also would say I really agree with what you said, because, the way that the human brain literally works is it is a, building block maker, right? It takes all kinds of information and experiences that it perceives in order to output reactions based on new experiences, right? And I think that if we can understand that and make sure that, ideas of, not only just creativity, but again, like I said, the emotional core and the conditions of who we are as humans that would thereby create a reaction or create an artwork or, create an understanding of the situation, right? If we can make sure that, we are inputting the kind of building blocks, right, that we want to have be kind of our core, our new core,
Yeah.
that we actually really do have the power to do that. So it's all about thinking through, what is that makeup, right, that, constitute how we experience the world,
For sure. All right. Anybody who's on the line, feel free to put questions into the chat window. I'm going to ask a couple more, but I will certainly ask the questions that come fired off through our listeners and watchers out there. Favorite science fiction author? I'm a huge science fiction fan. So favorite science fiction author or favorite science fiction book?
Hands down, Octavia Butler, favorite science fiction author forever. It's literally just right here because we just had our book club meeting over the weekend. I just finished Exhalation by Ted.
So good. So good.
I cannot recommend this book enough, especially for our current moment. It is a wonderful, wonderful read. So that's a current favorite book, but Octavia Butler, just read every single thing she's written.
Yeah.
You'll be a better human for it.
I think of the title story from Exhalation is such a fantastic fable. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, how could you make an allegory of entropy so interesting, and also these technical descriptions of mechanical beings and how they operate actually interesting to read. So he's a master. He's amazing. Butler is also a master. Le Guin's one of my favorite, and Light of Heaven and Left Hand of Darkness, fantastic, amazing books. I find myself going back to those all the time. Just started, funnily enough, not that it's science fiction, although it's a little bit, just started rereading White Noise because I was looking for a natural disaster book that wasn't about, that wasn't either Camus or, something else pandemic related. Yeah. Kind of curious. Also had sort of forgotten very much a campus, folly of errors type of book too. So one of the questions that just came through from Storm Asher, what is your favorite exhibition at the Underground Museum been so far?
Storm, that's not fair. That's like picking up
a
child. My favorite exhibition so far. I do love them all. I would say that Dina Lawson's exhibition, while I think favorite is not the right word, Dina Lawson's exhibition was such a culmination of so many things. First and foremost, when Noah had his idea to create the Underground Museum and he wanted to address the underrepresentation of incredible artists working in the field, he had Dina on his list. So this was a moment for us to really honor the blueprint and go back to it. It was also the first exhibition that we put up post partnership with Museum of Contemporary Art. That's not to say that the partnership is over. That's to say that, we did that exhibition without the Museum of Contemporary Art, without MoCA. And so it was a real demonstration for us as a family, the Underground Museum family, to say, we can do this. We are an independent institution. We are able to put on world-renowned artists at our space and create, an environment that is, again, demonstrative of very rigorous contemporary art, but that is also telling the stories that we want to make sure are told. And then also, I think too, there was something just so, like I said, situationally and environmentally powerful about the exhibition itself. We had one woman come in and said that she felt that she was surrounded by the power of 10 Black grandmothers while she was in the museum. And just to be able to hold that space for somebody, I think is an honor, is a responsibility that we take very, very seriously. And the fact that we were able to create that was incredible. And also too, to this day, Dina Lawson's opening will go down as one of my most cherished memories, because I don't know if any of you were there, but the power went out on us for 3 hours, and all guests, we moved everybody into the museum, and we had all these candles from another event that we had done, and we just put candles in all the corners. And then one of our neighbors called and were like, what do you guys need? And we were like, we need lights. And they actually like Burning Man folks, and so they brought over like 2 duffel bags full of LED like Christmas lights that we like lined all the corners, and it like turned into this seance. And we had one boombox that I always like tell the story, and I say, like, God bless the batteries in that boombox, because they somehow lasted us for 3 hours. We would just like move it from like space to space, using cell phones to try to see up close, on the photographs. Anyway, it was just like such a magical moment of like, we're going to be all right, and this is going to be beautiful. So yeah, so those are some like really good memories.
Nice.
Not a favorite, but some good memories.
Nice. How about other arts organizations? Have you done any new work, made any new connections with other LA arts organizations, or collaborating in any new and unique ways? This is from Lauren Miyamoto.
Yes. I mean, I think that Noah's vision for the museum was always to be, a playground for many arts organizations, right? This is about creating a network. So we've done work with other galleries. We've done work with other nonprofits. I think I would just say, moving forward, there's probably going to be way more of that resource sharing, and I'm actually really looking forward to seeing what that looks like, but yes.
For sure. Are you going to do any virtual exhibitions?
Not sure yet. I mean, I think like, again, I'm going to put that in the category of, y'all, we are still deep in the fog. And so we have an incredibly important, beautiful exhibition by our founder, Noah Davis, coming. And I think that before we think about virtual exhibitions, we are just lighting candles, talking to our crystals, and, trying to figure out when that's going to go up.
One of the other participants writes, does the Underground Museum have the capacity to have the full moon sound bath virtually, at least for the upcoming full moon in April?
Who asked that?
That was Amanda Sadie Salako, if I got the name correct. Hopefully I did. If I didn't, I apologize.
Thank you for your question. I love that you asked that. I love that we launched Soundbats last December, and you know, they have been such a hit, and we are so excited that they are such a hit because they are so wonderful to do together. I am absolutely trying to figure out if it's possible. Obviously, we want to honor the power of the sound, and I don't actually know what it's possible, but you know, thank you for asking. It is in the works. We are trying to work out how we can do it. So stay tuned for sure.
Yeah, I think so much still relies on this sense of the near horizon being so uncertain, and we take that as, again, a kind of, it's very foreboding, but at the same time, I like your metaphor of the boat in the fog dropping anchor. You've got an anchor, right? You've got some sense of stability. You might not know which direction you're going, but at least you know you're not heading there off a cliff or over a waterfall, at least just yet.
You know, and to Amanda's question, I think that like one of the you know, fundamental pieces of a sound bath or of a, you know, extended meditation, which is essentially, for anyone who doesn't know what a sound bath is, it's an extended meditation using quartz bowls that create different vibrations that can be felt throughout your body. And I think that, you know, I'm so happy that, you know, they brought this up because it is actually about sitting with uncertainty, you know, and kind of allowing yourself to step into a space of expansion, you know, for 45 minutes. You know, so that's actually a really useful tool. And I think if we can figure out ways to kind of transport our bodies physically into that thinking, that is useful.
Excellent. So we're closing in on our 1 o'clock, and I'm going to say this was fantastic. Thank you. I wish you and everyone at the Underground Museum the best of health. And they are obviously in excellent hands. The community is in excellent hands. And we're very pleased to have you on the line with us today, Megan. I really appreciate it.
So much, everybody, and sending out a lot of love and strength and health to everybody on the line. We at the Underground Museum, you know, love you all, and we cannot wait for you to be back with us. And we really do hope that you will look out for that opening date for Noah's show, because when we all get back together, it is going to feel so good. And we can't.
100%. 100%. There will be human contact. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.